Hi everybody, Namaste, and welcome to the third episode of Upadeṣa-Undiyar. Today we're going to talk about the beginning of self-realization, selfless service. Verse 3 reads, desireless action, niṣkāmya-karma, dedicated to God, will purify the mind and show the path to liberation. Now, in the last verses, Bhagavān Rāmana talks about the disadvantages of karma-kanda, that it binds one to birth and death in the material world. Why? Because you have to take birth again to get the results of your actions. So the beginning of detachment from this is to do the same things you were doing selfishly, but do them unselfishly instead. And there are some notes here that the practices that he's giving in Upadeṣa-Undiyar are in order of their effectiveness. So in other words, although it's very easy for most people to do some kind of seva, selfless service, that's a very slow process. It takes a long time to give any benefit. However, it does have the advantage that one's ordinary activities in the world can be dovetailed or offered in this service. For example, one can worship the deity very nicely in the home with food, incense, water, and so on. And this will give the same benefit as worshiping in the temple. It's still service. One should perform this service with whatever is at hand, with whatever activities are normally going on in the life anyway. And that will bring you closer to God. Why? Because you're not doing it for your own benefit. In fact, even doing service for the sake of your own spiritual advancement is not really pure. One should do the service simply because God recommends it in the scriptures. And the teachers also, all the teachers recommend it. Even the teachers on the religious level recommend it. It's also the only spiritual practice that can be done in a group. In a group, one can get together and offer things in the temple, or chant, or hear holy discourses, and so on. But the higher stages of spiritual practice are done with the heart and the mind. And so they're best done alone. In fact, if one doesn't go off alone, it's almost certain he's not going to be able to attain the highest enlightenment. So these group practices are just a beginning. So while it's true that no action done with the body, heart, or mind can give complete liberation, still, the service that we do can prepare us for that liberation by purifying us from selfishness. This motivation of gain and competition is very, very destructive. Again, because it's purva-karma. It's based on what I did in the past, I'm going to get something in the future. And so it binds us to that future, to receive our karma. To be free from that, we have to act simply out of duty, or even better, out of love. See, there are two ranges of this service, devotional service. According to instructions, which is called Vaidhi Bhakti, Vaidhi means instructions, or according to love, Raganuga Bhakti. Raganuga means one is following a certain mood. Raga, Atmika, Anuga. So one gets a certain mood in the heart towards the object of worship, and then begins to follow that mood, and the mood becomes like God. The mood becomes the guru. The mood itself becomes the means of service. And so there should be love. And when that love is there, the service is spontaneous. He doesn't require any more external guru. He doesn't require any more external group to support his service or to motivate his service. He simply does it spontaneously out of love. And this is the highest level of service, seva. Bhagavān also points out that self-inquiry, vichara, is not an action. So it doesn't fall under even this classification of seva, but it comes in a higher plane. And we'll describe that in later verses. We'll discuss it also. And that way you can understand the complete spectrum of spiritual practices. Now for the next verse. This is certain. Puja, japa, and dhyana are actions of the body, speech, and mind, respectively. Each succeeding one is superior to the last. So service done with the body is good. Service done with the heart is better. Service done as a physical action is liberating from selfishness. But to create this wonderful mood of bhakti requires concentration. And concentration comes from japa. Japa means repetition of the holy names. Whatever form of Godhead that you worship, you should repeat their mantra or their holy name. And this leads to dhyana, meditation. Dhyana is when the mind is fully concentrated, single-pointed on one object. And that object should be our mantra. This is how Bhagavān Rāmana defines dhyana. So I recommend the Gayatri mantra. And why is that? Because Gayatri points directly to Brahman as the supreme. Now there are so many different forms of God, Shiva, Rama, Krishna, Ganesh, and so on. And all of them have different qualities. So people of different nature are attracted to them according to their preferences. And that's fine. But ultimately, all those avatars, all those devas, are emanations from Brahman. The Brahman is the substrate of pure consciousness that gives rise to all creations, all manifestations, all emanations. Therefore, if we start out from the beginning trying to approach Brahman with Gayatri mantra, then we'll save ourselves a lot of trouble. Now, as far as I know, there aren't too many groups that chant Gayatri mantra as kirtan. In the future, we may establish one. Well, we'll see. The next verse. Worship of any of the 8 forms, thinking that all the 8 forms are forms of God, is good worship, puja, of God. So in the scriptures and in the temples, we see many forms of God. And they can be made of stone, wood, metal, earth. Sometimes a temporary form is made of plaster and then destroyed at the end of the worship. That's usually karma-kanda worship, which is done for a specific purpose, like wealth, children, or something like that. We don't recommend that. Ramana here recommends only selfless service, unselfish service, performed not for any particular goal except self-realization. And even then, we shouldn't be thinking, oh, I want self-realization while we're doing it. We should do it simply because we love the idea and we love God. Seva, or puja, can only be done to the elements, such as earth, water, fire, air, ether, and so on, by ritual service. In other words, if you go to the temple, you see the pujari is offering lamps and incense and water and so many, the elements. to the form of God. So these are understood to be extensions or expansions of God himself. The incense, for example, represents earth. As it's stated in Bhagavad Gita, aroma is the quality of earth. Taste is the quality of water. And so the next thing offered is water. And then fire. Light is the quality of fire. Sound is the quality of ether. Akash, or space. So if we offer these things to God in service, they become purifying, liberating. Although they don't give the highest enlightenment in themselves, still it's the first step on the path. Now, we can also worship living beings, animals and humans, as expansions of God, forms of God. And of course, that begins with worship of the Guru. Worship of the Guru is very, very important. Guru Puja and Guru Bhakti is even more important, to develop love for the Guru. Because after all, the Guru is giving the highest benefit. Not that it's a business deal. Oh, I'll love you and you give me enlightenment. No, but we love the Guru because he is the perfected form of the human being. So when we encounter someone like Rāmana, Bhagavān, we automatically want to love him because of his perfection, because of his beauty and his enlightenment. Not because he can benefit us. Well, he can benefit us, but that shouldn't be the motivating force. However, we can also worship God in the forms of other living beings by giving them food, shelter, clothing, and so on. We can't do this in the case of the elements. They can only be worshipped by formal puja. But informal or appropriate service can be done to any living entity with the same mood. And that's just as good, or maybe even better. Now the next verse. Rather than praising God, japa is good. Rather than japa done in a loud voice, japa faintly whispered within the mouth is good. And rather than japa within the mouth, japa done by mind is good. This mental repetition, or manasika japa, is what is called meditation, dhyana. So this is Raman Maharshi's definition of dhyana. Dhyana is when we repeat our mantra mentally, silently, in the mind. Why is this so beneficial? Yes, it's good to chant our mantra with the mouth and ears, and even holding the beads to engage the sense of touch, and so on. That's very nice. But when we focus on the mantra in the mind, what this does is it crowds out the mental chatter. It's perfectly possible to sit there and chant the mantra and have the mind going a mile a minute, thinking of this and that, isn't it? But what we're saying is that if you simply repeat the mantra without thinking of anything else, we have focused the mind on one thought. Dhyana, meditation. And then from there, if we simply get rid of that one thought, then we've reached the goal of the silent mind. That's why silent japa, mental japa, is considered superior. Next verse. Rather than meditation interrupted by other thoughts, uninterrupted meditation upon God, like a river or the falling of ghee, is excellent to do. So in other words, one lady, for example, asked Ramana, what mantra is good? And he said, well, any mantra, you know how he is. Any mantra is good, yeah. And then she said, will Gayatri do? And he said, what can excel it? What mantra is superior to Gayatri? And so we practice and we recommend Gayatri mantra. And then she asked, well, then how long should I chant? Half an hour? 1 hour? And he says, all the time, or as much as possible. So in other words, if we really want to chant this mantra successfully, if we really want to realize this mantra, we should chant at all times and places. Keep our beads with us constantly. Keep them in our hands constantly. Fall asleep with our beads in our hands. Wake up with our beads in our hands, chanting. Make it automatic. The last thought at night will be the first thought in the morning. So it's best, if you're meditating on mantra, to fall asleep with the mantra in your mind and heart. And then when you wake up in the morning, first thing you'll think of is the mantra again. And then you can go on with your day, chanting constantly in the mind. And you'll be amazed if you do this practice, actually, how little thinking is required in life. We get up in the morning, go in the bathroom, brush our teeth, go in the kitchen, make a cup of tea, sit down, do our meditation, maybe do a little office work, cook breakfast, correspond with friends. Maybe we go to the market, or we go to the job. We've had the same job for a long time. We could do it practically with our eyes closed. So what is the need of thinking? And if we actually practice chanting this mantra mentally all the time, we find we can keep it up 95% of the time. And there's really little need to use the mind for anything else. So I want to close with a nice shloka from Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Purana. The supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So, ahaituki apratihata, unmotivated. In other words, we're not doing it for personal gain. And uninterrupted, which means at all times, in all places, and in all ways. So this is what we need to really satisfy the self. At this stage of devotion that we're talking about now, the stage of seva, devotional service, bhakti, puja, and like that, we have to make our puja or our bhakti uninterrupted and unmotivated, and that will give us the greatest satisfaction. Why? Because we have detached the mind from purva-karma, from selfish gain, from doing this to get that, tit for tat. Business. It's simply a business. I'll do this, God, and then you give me that. No, that's not religion. That's business. So what we're saying is instead to detach the mind from purva-karma and instead do bhakti out of love, unmotivated and uninterrupted. And that will automatically lead to love of all creatures as emanations from God. This is what our community needs. We see people congregating in groups, and what are they doing? Well, outwardly they may be following some ritual, but in their minds they're searching for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, isn't it? Or maybe a business opportunity, or maybe they're thinking to become socially very well known, famous, or attract followers, like that. They're very rarely there just to do the seva. So this is why doing seva alone is such a good indicator of our actual status in spirituality. That if we can be alone without a group to motivate or support us, that we can make advancement so much quicker than being held to a group. Just like a very, very good student will make much more progress studying alone than being held back by a class or a group. So the same thing applies in spiritual life. We should go on our own and see if we can meet this test to perform our devotion unmotivated and uninterrupted and completely satisfy the self. Namaste. Thank you for being with us. Om Tat Sat. Om Harihi Om.